So it's our last week of our series, Stretch. In the last few weeks, we stretched our bodies, stretched our brains, stretched some rubber bands, and hopefully stretched our faith too. And all of that stretching is great, but it's possible to stretch too far. Have you ever strained, sprained, or pulled a muscle? If you're familiar with soccer, you know injuries are pretty common. Sometimes these injuries are real, but faking an injury is sometimes part of the strategy of the game. Either way, when a player gets injured, they sometimes need to be carried off the field on a stretcher. Unfortunately, the stretcher experience can sometimes be more painful than the original injury.
Ficaram nervosos, de repente semifinal, né? Isso acontece. Entendeu? Foi de ré, deu pra entender aquele movimento ali dele. Nós estamos com imagens recuperadas, estamos de novo observando o lance. Ele chegou a cair o zagueiro da frente em cima da cabeça do Gladstone. Veja aí, ele não sentiu firmeza, o Gladstone ficou olhando. Foram duas tentativas.
I've got to give these stretcher attendees credit. They're not great at their jobs, but they do keep trying. You and I have probably never dropped someone on a stretcher, but we definitely know that sometimes it takes a few tries to get things right. Have you ever tried to solve a Rubik's Cube before? Usually it takes a lot of trial and error to figure out how to solve it. You try, fail, and then try again. Ta-da! Yeah, I really have no idea how to do these things. Now, no one solves a Rubik's Cube correctly on the first try. It takes a lot of patience to learn how to solve one at all, let alone solve one in record time.
Woo! What is it? What is it? I can say NAR. Yes. NAR.
Whoa!
Whoa! Whoa!
Come on, get a sub 5.
Now, for the last few weeks, we've been talking about how you can grow and strengthen your faith by stretching it, just like you would a muscle. You can stretch your faith by making a commitment to grow, starting a new habit that will help your faith grow, letting go of an old habit that is keeping you from growing. When we decide to grow our muscles, physically or spiritually, we all start with big commitments and great intentions, But here's the truth. At some point, you will experience setbacks. The commitment you made will feel less exciting, interesting, or urgent than it did in the beginning. Or you'll forget to practice the new habit you started. Or once again, you'll grab onto that old habit you tried to give up. Someday, maybe someday soon, you're going to fail. And when you fail, what do you do next? I know no one likes to admit they're a failure, so I'm going to break the ice. When it comes to my faith, I have failed so many times. Take reading the Bible. I have tried so many times to start a daily quiet time or a reading plan, either through books or the Bible app. And I think the furthest I've ever made it through without missing a day is just 45 days. Now, there are many reasons we might fail in our faith. Maybe we, like I did, commit to reading the Bible every day, but don't. We try to make it a habit to pray consistently, and suddenly realize it's been months since we last talked to God. Maybe we decide to love others like God loves us, until we snap at someone who gets under our skin. When we fail, we often feel defeated, ashamed, and hopeless. We sometimes even give up. Today, I want to challenge you to think about failure differently. What if failure isn't something to fear or be ashamed of? What if failure can actually help our faith grow? What if failure is just part of the stretch? Some of the greatest heroes in the Bible were people who some might consider failures. Epic failures. Moses was chosen to lead God's people, but he was terrible at public speaking. He once killed somebody. Sarah was told by God that she would be a mother at an old age, but she laughed in God's face and took matters into her own hands. God made David the king of Israel, but David used his power to take advantage of a woman and had her husband killed. And one of Jesus' closest disciples, Peter, denied having ever known Jesus, and he cut off a guy's ear with a sword. All of these great biblical heroes failed, but their failures weren't the end of their stories. Even when they failed, they let their faith be stretched. Moses' faith was stretched when he saw that God could use him despite his past mistakes and present fears. Sarah's faith was stretched when she discovered God not only forgave her for her doubts and disobedience, but still gave her what was promised to her. David's faith was stretched when God allowed him to experience both grace and justice for the wrongs he committed. And Peter's faith was stretched when Jesus not only forgave him for denying him, but then promised to make Peter a great leader in the history of God's church. All of these people were failures, but their failures weren't the end of their stories. For these followers of God, failure was just another stretch that helped them develop a stronger faith. Paul, one of the most influential leaders in the history of the church, and whose letter to Romans we've been reading, also understood failure well. Let's look at Romans 7:15-25. For I do not understand what I am doing, because I do not practice what I want to do, but I do what I hate. Now if I do what I do not want to do, I agree with the law that it is good. So now I am no longer the one doing it, but it is sin living in me. For I know that nothing good lives in me, that is, in my flesh. For the desire to do what is good is with me, but there is no ability to do it. For I do not do the good that I want to do, but I practice the evil that I do not want to do. Now if I do what I do not want, I am no longer the one that does it, but it is the sin that lives in me. So I discovered this law. When I want to do what is good, evil is present within me. For in my inner self, I delight in God's law, but I see a different law in the parts of my body, waging war against the law of my mind and taking me prisoner to the law of sin in the parts of my body. What a wretched man I am. Who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then, with my mind, I myself am serving the law of God, but with my flesh, the law of sin. Even Paul, the great leader and super Christian, said he struggled. He didn't understand why he did what he did. He wanted to do the right thing, but couldn't seem to do it. He often did things he hated and couldn't stop. He was always at war between good and evil. He sometimes felt hopeless, but trusted that God would always rescue him. When I read Paul's words, I see that the two reasons he often failed are the same two reasons you and I often fail. One, we fail to stop. We try to stop doing what we know we shouldn't do, but keep failing. Or we fail to start. We try to start doing things we know we should do, but keep failing at that too. In another letter, this one written to the Christians in a city called Corinth, Paul spoke about a specific area of his life that caused him to struggle. 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10. Especially because of the extraordinary revelations. Therefore, so that I would not exalt myself, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to torment me, so that I would not exalt myself. Concerning this, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it would leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is perfected in weakness. Therefore, I will most gladly boast all the more about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may reside in me. So I take pleasure in weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and in difficulties, for the sake of Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Not only did Paul fail when it came to sin, but there were also times when Paul felt overwhelmed, weak, and powerless. But rather than being frustrated or angry about his weaknesses, Paul found a way to delight or find pleasure in those weaknesses. How? Paul understood his failures and struggles weren't liabilities. They could actually bring him closer to Jesus. When Paul looked at his weaknesses, he saw opportunities for his faith to stretch and grow stronger. You might be excited now about stretching your faith and growing closer to Jesus, but at some point you will feel like a failure. You will make mistakes. You will doubt. You will ask questions. You will lose passion and focus. When you do, remember that God isn't surprised by your failure. Your failure is just part of the stretch. Failure will happen, but failure doesn't have to be the end of the story. When you fail, and you will, you have 2 choices. You can let shame, frustration, and hopelessness prevent you from trying again, or you can let God use your failure to stretch you and make your faith grow stronger. Next time you fail, whether it's next week or in the next 5 minutes, I hope you choose to keep moving forward and to keep stretching through your failures. Because you can stretch your faith even when you fail. So what do we do when we hit the brick wall that is failure? How do we turn our weakness, sinfulness, or shame into growth? This is the image I hope you remember when you think about failure.
Johnny has to win and to be sure of taking the title. And right now he seems to have lost control of his legs. And this is worrying. Oh, and he's starting to slow. And there is a little way to go. There's half a K to go. And Johnny is running out of time and is losing. He's losing his sense of direction. This is worrying. Oh, goodness me. This is a horrible sight. Jonathan Brownlee has lost it now and has staggered to a stop at the side of the course, and Alistair's stopped to help him along. And Alistair is going to try and carry his brother home. Dramatic scenes in Cozumel as the Olympic champion carries his younger brother towards the podium.
Oh my God, I cannot believe what we are seeing here. Matt, is this allowed? Is he allowed to help his brother? You know, is that part of the rules? I'm not too sure. We've never seen anything like this before.
Unbelievable scenes. Unbelievable scenes in Cozumel. The Brownlee brothers arm in arm, but it's not by way of celebration. Henry Schoeman's celebrating. He's going to win this race in Cozumel out of nowhere. But we have to be concerned about the health of Jonathan Brownlee, and they're not even on the final stretch yet. Schoeman wins in Cozumel. The brothers are coming home arm in arm to finish in second and third, but Johnny can hardly stand, and Alistair is having to drag him across the line and pushing him home for second. Johnny finishes in second. Goodness me, what an incredible conclusion here in Cozumel. I've never seen anything like that anywhere in world sport. Worrying scenes all round.
Keep that image in your mind as I give you 3 pieces of advice about how to turn a failure into a stretch. Before you fail, get a community. Do it now before you're stumbling. Surround yourself with people who want to see you succeed and be the kind of person who helps others through their failures. Ask someone to hold you accountable. Reach out for help from others when it's hard to keep moving. Don't be afraid to be honest and vulnerable. It's the best way to get the help you need. When you fail, fall on Jesus. Paul knew that only Jesus could rescue him from himself, and the same is true for you and me. When you fail, fall on Jesus. He won't be angry or disappointed or even surprised. He's God. He knows exactly who you are and how you struggle, and he loves you anyway. When you fail, get back up. Don't let failure or the fear of failure paralyze you. There's more to your story than your latest or greatest failure. If the people we talked about today teach us anything, it's that God is always ready to forgive and use us despite our failures. Every week of this series, you've had an opportunity to make a commitment to stretch your faith in a new way. You may not have wanted to talk about your commitment, but I wanted to ask you today to find somebody to talk about your commitments to another person. Say them out loud and ask the people around you to help you stay committed. Over the last few weeks, you may have committed to show up. If you're watching, you did it. Share with your group what you've learned these last few weeks and how you're going to put what you've learned into practice. Follow Jesus. If you've made the decision over the series, let someone know so they can tell you what the next steps are to take. Love God. If you made a commitment to spend more time with God, share it. We can help each other keep our commitments when it gets difficult. Love others. If you made a commitment to love others well, share that too. We're going to need each other to keep us accountable. And ask questions. If you're not sure what to think about following Jesus, that's okay. I hope you've been asking questions, and I hope you'll continue to ask them. Keep searching for truth. Don't stop. As we close this series, I hope you remember this. If you want your faith to grow and be strengthened, it doesn't happen overnight. But it has to start somewhere, and it can start today with a simple stretch. You can stretch your faith by making a commitment, by starting something new, by letting something go, and you can stretch your faith even when you fail.